Welcome to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. And now your host, Tim Johnson.
Greg Bowser, President of the Louisiana Chemical Association, joins us when we return on this edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Consumers and property owners with construction projects can have a successful result or regretful experiences that could have been avoided. Before any construction project, verify licensure of the contractor and check references. Scammers will claim to be insured or bonded, so always check first. Download our app, LA Contractor, from the Android or Apple Store. Visit our website, lacontractor.org, or contact the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. We're here to help before things go wrong. Hire a licensed contractor. It's the law.
I've been doing business with LBIS for 25 years. They're dependable, trustworthy. It's just the attention to detail with our clients.
Our folks have years and years of experience. They're highly trained professionals, but many companies have that asset. What I'd like to think makes LBIS a bit different is that we use those talents in a way that truly is dedicated to serving the needs of the folks who depend on us.
Promoting workplace safety and family wellness. That's our motto at Gulf Coast Occupational Medicine. The Gulf Coast staff is made up of some of the most knowledgeable and hardest working medical professionals in Louisiana. We care about your safety and your bottom line. With 8 convenient locations in the greater Baton Rouge area, our services include injury management, physical exams, medical surveillance, and substance abuse testing. For more information, visit us on the web at gcombr.info and ride the wave to safety. Passion, experience, safety. These are what set Arkell Constructors apart as a premier general contractor. At Arkell Constructors, our goal is to exceed our clients' expectations, whether it's commercial, industrial, or facility maintenance. We have the team and processes in place to provide a solution for you. To us, every project is a resume for our future. Arkell Constructors, the solution for your next building project.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Very pleased to welcome to the show for his second appearance, a good friend, Greg Bowser, President of the Louisiana Chemical Association. Welcome.
Thank you, Tim. It's good to be here, as always. You know, it's exciting to talk about what we're doing and our economy in the state of Louisiana and talk about what the chemical industry is doing.
We get to talk about some really good things, and we get to talk about maybe some not so good things. But since you were on the show last, which I think was at the beginning of last year, we've added affiliates in Lake Charles and Lafayette and Alexandria. So let's remind our viewers, Greg, about the Louisiana Chemical Association, your membership, the facilities, your mission, your areas of focus.
Well, the Louisiana Chemical Association, we're made up of, we have 65 companies, 66 companies with about 100 locations throughout the state of Louisiana. Now, primarily we're between New Orleans and Baton Rouge and Lake Charles, Calcasieu areas where most of our members are. We have some scattered around the state in North Louisiana and both in Monroe and Shreveport. We employ about 27,000 people in the state of Louisiana, and we're trying to grow every day, you know, and just hope that we can keep it going.
You mentioned 27,000 direct employees, right? So, you know, we know the spinoff effect. So let's talk about that. Let's talk specifically about what the chemical industry means to Louisiana's economy in terms of the jobs, the spinoff, the economic impact, taxes, all of those things.
Well, you talk about the direct jobs. I mean, our economy, when you look at what has happened to economies over the last, in other states, they went through a downturn. And you look at even here in Louisiana, some of our segments of our economy went through a downturn. But you look at the Baton Rouge area and the Lake Charles area, they did not.
Two economies that have sort of
they rose
been
above
able to rise above
the
downturn.
Exactly.
And
And a big part of that is because of the investments that we saw coming from the chemical industry. You look at what Sassaw has done for the Lake Charles area. You look at the number of facilities that have expanded in the Baton Rouge, New Orleans corridor. That's kept our economy going, and it's surpassed what we expected. And I think that's been a big help for us. And from a state perspective, chemical industry generates almost $500 million in taxes. Just direct taxes that they pay to the state of Louisiana. That's huge, not counting the jobs.
Well, and you think about that jobs, and our good friend Dr. Lawrence Scott does a lot of study of the industry, and he talks about the spinoff jobs, because for every one of those 27,000 direct jobs in the industry, There are a vast number of indirect jobs, not only in the service companies who work with the industry, but if you think about a place like Lake Charles, what it means to the restaurants, what it means to the car dealerships, what it means to the grocery stores. The impact overall of the chemical industry in Louisiana is huge, and its tentacles are long.
They are. One of the things that the economists look at is they use a multiplier effect. And when you look at the manufacturing, especially chemical manufacturing, that multiplier effect is a lot higher. Normally, you know, what we see is about 5.5 to 6.5 times whatever the number is. So you multiply that 27,000 by 6.5, that's tremendous.
You're talking close to 200,000 jobs that this industry is either directly or indirectly responsible for in the state of Louisiana.
Absolutely. And if you want to just take a conservative view, just multiply it by 5.
Right.
And you see the impact that we have. And we're talking about jobs, Tim, that pay in excess of $80,000 a year for the most part. The kind of jobs that everybody wants to have, where you have benefits, both retirement and health insurance benefits. And so it gives people a chance to have a really good way of life in our state and to raise their kids and be a big productive part of the community.
One of the things that I think is often overlooked, or a couple of things that I think are often overlooked when we talk about the chemical industry, is number one, the amount of science and technology that it brings to our state. These are technically advanced companies. There's a lot of science and there's spin-off from that. There are relationships with the universities all over. But even more importantly, sometimes we overlook the value of the products and their impact on our lives. One of the things we do, as you know very well, in our consulting firm as we work with industry, is we try to point out that these are not just big industrial facilities with gates and fences and pumps and motors and stacks. These are places that make the air conditioning refrigerant for your refrigerators and your air conditioners. These are the places that make pharmaceuticals and make your quality of life better. And I know the LCA is focused on that as well.
We are focused on it. One of the things we want to focus on with a lot of people is to get them to understand how what we do makes your life better. And I think that people don't, because we don't put it in the end product per se, they don't understand that it's important to have that and what that basic chemical does in manufacturing. You know, I remember when I first started in this business, you know, you'd ride by a chemical plant and all you saw was steam and hissing pipes, and that's all you knew. And so I try to take that approach and say, bring people into the plant. Let them see what it really makes, and then have them understand what goes into that end product. That part of what you make goes into the aspirin. You know, part of what they make is responsible for the tires on your car. Part of what they make is responsible for you being able to wear the nice clothes that you wear and to get them dry cleaned.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things that makes your life easier. And then we're not talking about necessarily the other pharmaceuticals. The new breakthroughs in medicines that are going that's responsible for.
None of which would be possible without the input and the participation of the chemical industry, and particularly the chemical industry in Louisiana. Let's talk about growth. You know, we've all seen all of the announcements. You mentioned Sasol in Lake Charles and other big investments that have been announced, somewhere between $75 and $100 billion over the last 5, 6, 7 years that have been announced. I think about half of that, 40 to 50 billion, is either complete or it's coming out of the ground. Let's talk about the remainder of that investment, Greg. How does it stand? Where is it? Do you believe it will be completed? And what's the long-term outlook for additional investment in our state?
Well, I think it's going to be completed. We have about 26 to 40 billion dollars that we feel that's coming out of the ground. And so the next wave now is about to come. It's on the drawing board. It's in development. It's in engineering. It's all that's being done. Our economy has to be such that we're competitive, and that's the one thing that's happened in this industry is that we used to compete with China and other countries for facilities. Now we're competing with the states next door. They're very competitive. I mean, we read several months ago where a huge ExxonMobil project went to Texas over Louisiana. Something like that's it's generational change, and so we've got to remain competitive. While we've gotten 26 billion, while we've got another $50 billion in investment that people are talking about coming to Louisiana, it's not here yet. So we've got to remain competitive.
Let's take a break. I want to come back and I want to talk about that competitiveness specifically and what we need to do to improve over what we've seen over the last couple of years. We're visiting with Greg Bowser. He's the president of the Louisiana Chemical Association, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
For over a quarter century, Kelly's has operated with honesty, integrity, and above all, safety. Kelly's features a fleet of quality equipment operated by dedicated, safety-minded employees skilled in land clearing, above-ground right-of-way maintenance, vegetation control, station yard and manned facility maintenance, above-ground pipeline support, and more. Kelly's Industrial Services, where pipeline right-of-way maintenance gets done right.
What if I said that whatever good things you build you? And that in this economy, sweat never loses its value? What if I said that there isn't a challenge in the world too great for a craft professional with the right tools, and that the steps that lead from where you are to where you want to be can only be built by you? Build your future at byf.org.
Consumers and property owners with construction projects can have a successful result or regretful experiences that could have been avoided. Before any construction project, verify licensure of the contractor and check references. Scammers will claim to be insured or bonded, so always check first. Download our app, LA Contractor, from the Android or Apple Store. Visit our website, lacontractor.org, or contact the Louisiana State Licensing Board for Contractors. We're here to help before things go wrong. Hire a licensed contractor. It's the law.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Greg Bowser, president of the Louisiana Chemical Association, is our guest. Greg, in the last segment, we talked about investment. Significant investment, not just in the dollars that come, but in the jobs that are created, high-paying, really good jobs, taxes that are paid as a result of those investments. But the thing that investment and job creators fear the most is uncertainty. We had a long time with a lot of announcement where we had a fairly stable tax and regulatory climate in our state, but as a result of budget issues a couple of years ago, the governor and the legislature put some temporary taxes in place to close the fiscal gap. Some of those were rollbacks of gains that the industry had made dating back all the way to Governor Blanco. Within the last couple of years, the governor by executive order has made changes, substantial changes, to the Louisiana Industrial Property Tax Exemption Program, which has been the staple incentive for the industry. All of this has created uncertainty. I know it's a concern of your members. I know it's a concern of the industry. Talk to us about that uncertainty and what the results you are seeing might be.
I think when you look at what the administration has done and the legislature has done with respect to the state budget, we'll start there. When you have an unstable state budget, that's a concern to everybody. But then what has happened is we've seen that the mood seems to be to solve it, but to not address it on much on the spending side. Two, on looking at individual taxes structure, and so that leaves business. And when you talk about making a $1 billion investment, that's something that once you invest and you put the infrastructure in the ground, you can't move it. So when we talk about uncertainty, what happens is you make that decision based on commitments and where you think you're going to be. And then you put the infrastructure in the ground, and all of a sudden the administration says, well, we need some money, and you're here, so you can't move, so we'll change the rules on you. And that's your share. You should look at it as an honor and contribute to the economy. The problem is you've run your economic model based on a commitment that you had, and all of a sudden they change the world on you. And that's the uncertainty that they talk about. Can Louisiana look at a company and say, come to Louisiana, invest $1 billion, and we're going to be there in the long term. We're going to honor our word. We're going to honor our commitment. You talk about the 10-year tax exemption. Right now you have people going around saying, look, all you have to do is remove their exemption and all of this cash is going to fall out of the sky. Well, the problem with that, Tim, is that I got you here because I told you this is what we're going to do. And now all of a sudden you're saying to the rest of the world, to that other $40 to $50 billion investment, hey, if you get here, once you get here, the game changes. And that's the problem. And I think we have to bring some degree of certainty. We all understand that you've got to balance the budget. But I think we need to take a long, hard look at what we do structurally as a state. Not necessarily that we're spending more than we ought to, but something's wrong. I mean, we go through this every so many years. There's an issue.
We're completely out of balance there when it comes to being able to fund our priorities, the kind of things that the industry looks for. We'll talk a little bit about education and workforce development later. We'll talk a little bit about infrastructure in our states and the needs of the industry. But that's exactly right. I think the short-sightedness there, particularly around the industrial property tax exemption, is if that business makes the decision to go somewhere else, you're not going to get anything ever. Right. So why not delay for a period of 8 or 10 years that tax in order to incentivize that company to be here? Because we've got to fight against Texas, as you mentioned, every day, and they are doing a good job incentivizing their job creators.
And that's the thing that really kind of gets to me when I listen to some of the people talk about this, is they make it seem like, well, the foregone revenue. Well, I'll give you an example. We talked about the Exxon facility that went to Texas. The foregone revenue might be X. If that's the case, if that company doesn't locate and you don't grant them the exemption, you should get that revenue.
Right.
But it doesn't happen.
Never happens that way, does it? It doesn't fall out of the sky.
I asked the simple question is this. Look, tell me how many times a facility was going to go someplace, asked for an incentive, or was going to be granted an incentive, then all of a sudden they weren't granted incentive, but they located there anyway.
Right.
I'm not aware of any project where that's happened.
And you've been at this a long time. You would know, right?
And look, I'm not telling you it doesn't exist. I'm just not aware of it. And so I asked the people who say, just do away with it and they'll locate here anyway. And I asked them, tell me where that has happened. And I haven't gotten an answer yet. It may be out there.
I don't think you will. So let's strip away the rhetoric, right? You hear a lot of things out there from a lot of different people. But as it exists today, with the uncertainty around our fiscal situation, with the uncertainty that's been created around our incentive situation, are we competitive with Texas as far as the industry is concerned?
It's hard to be competitive with Texas. I mean, if you look at us versus Texas, we have to be better, because just on scale we lose. I mean, it's just that simple. They have you look at the number of people, you look at the infrastructure, the whole structure.
Right. You look at all of the other industry that is there that feeds.
You talk about the other industry that's there. You talk about it from an education perspective, from an infrastructure perspective. So we have to be better. We have to be a step better. And we have some advantages. We have other industries that are located here. We have a facility here. And it's easier sometimes to talk them into expanding because you're already here. You're familiar with working with us. Louisiana is a great place to live and work. And one of the things that we do is that, when we make a commitment to you, it's good. And no matter who's in office, it's traditionally been a good commitment. And I think that's the kind of relationships that we have to build on. And so what's going on now is we just have to make sure we don't mess that up.
I want to take a break. I want to come back as we sit here and tape today. We're in the middle of the regular legislative session after a failed special session was called to look at trying to fix, quote, the fiscal cliff. So I want to talk about that regular legislative session, what you guys are looking out for, what your expectations might be. We're visiting with Greg Bowser. He's the president of the Louisiana Chemical Association, and you're watching the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.
Passion, experience, safety. These are what set Arkell Constructors apart as a premier general contractor. At Arkell Constructors, our goal is to exceed our clients' expectations, whether it's commercial, industrial, or facility maintenance. We have the team and processes in place to provide a solution for you. To us, every project is a resume for our future. Arkell Constructors, the solution for your next building project.
Since 1919, we've designed and constructed hundreds of industrial plants, roads, ships, dams, and executed some of the most complex jobs in the world. In fact, our quality and dependability are legendary. Today, the legend continues as Brown & Root delivers engineering, construction, maintenance, and industrial specialty services throughout the U.S. and the world from our headquarters here in Louisiana. We are Brown & Root.
It might be one of the most efficient, most effective methods of communications we've ever used.
For more than 25 years, the TJC Group has been helping industry communicate and build relationships with communities, elected officials, and governmental agencies. We are the leading firm in the U.S. for the development, management, and facilitation of industry-based community advisory panels.
Whether you're building a new facility or you manage an existing business, let us put our community and governmental relations experience to work for you.
The TJC Group, facilitating solutions for business and industry.
Welcome back to the Louisiana Business and Industry Show. Greg Bowser of the Louisiana Chemical Association is our guest. One of the things we've heard Governor John Bel Edwards say on a number of occasions is that business and industry doesn't pay its fair share in Louisiana. I think he's generally talking about corporate income tax when he says that, but a lot of corporations are LLCs and particularly small businesses, and those taxes flow through to the individuals. So I just ask you this way, is industry paying its fair share in Louisiana?
I think so. I think that when you look at, let's take the sales tax, for example. We recently had a study, the legislature had this, a group of legislators had this study done when they passed additional penny sales tax. And you look at how did that break down? How does that break down? Industry pays about 48%, and individuals pay about 52%.
Yeah.
When you look from across the country, we're within the norm when you look at what business pays. Business pays somewhere in the neighborhood between 48 and 52% of the taxes. So we're within the norm. When you go back and look at what has happened to our state and what comes in, you realize the largest tax exemption was passed probably in 2008. It was individual income tax exemption.
Right.
When they changed the income tax brackets back. Right. That's the largest tax exemption on the books.
Well, and if you think of the homestead exemption for personal property, right?
Largest one on, and so when you look at all those exemptions, the big exemptions, they're not corporate. They're not companies, they're individuals. And we've shown no willingness to address that. And as long as you do that, you're going to keep chasing that rabbit.
My experience is, and I've worked with industry as you have now for close to 30 years, my experience is that they are more than willing to pay, quote, their fair share. But what they look for is what we talked about earlier, that certainty in the structure, that certainty in the regulatory system, that certainty in the incentive packages that they are offered. Tell us what the rules are. Keep the rules the same, and we are more than willing to pay our fair share and engage in support of our communities and our state. But if you look at places like Iberville Parish and St. James Parish, where industry pays the majority of the taxes to governments in those areas, you know that two things need to happen. Number one, there needs to be a recognition that industry does pay its fair share, one, and number two, we need a structure that is fair and growth oriented.
Well, you look at you take the top 12 industrial parishes where most of the industry is located. They're also our top 12 richest parishes.
Right. Teacher pay
is the highest. Right. They spend the most on schools, not just teacher pay, but on schools. You look at their individual residents pay less than the average, the state average, in property taxes.
And that's what business and industry does for its communities. A week or so ago, we had a failed, what by all accounts was a failed special session to try to close the, quote, fiscal cliff. We are now in the second week of the regular session of the legislature. What is the LCA looking out for, both from a positive and a negative perspective? You know, most industry groups go into a session and they're ready to play a little bit of offense and a whole lot of defense, right? What are you guys looking for?
Well, let me back up for just a second. We talk about the special session as being a failed session. I don't see how you say it's a failed session. What happened is the result that some folks wanted didn't come out.
Quote, from the governor's perspective, right? It was
and
failed.
so, because this is a deliberate process. if for it to be successful, then the governor should just introduce it and it goes automatically through. That's the way, from his perspective, and that's the way he should look at it. But from a legislative perspective, they were against raising your individual taxes. Is that failure? I don't know. I don't think it is.
They kept it from happening.
Kept it from happening. Is that failure? I think you have to look at it like that. What are we looking at for this regular session? Nobody knows. I mean, we had a number of things on the agenda, but then when you start talking with the administration and the leaders in the legislature, what they want to do is accelerate the regular session. So we're talking about a session that started yesterday, started on Monday, and they're talking about ending that session the first week of May. That compresses a lot of stuff. So we're going back, looking at some stuff that we wanted to do and making some decisions today, saying, look, maybe we shouldn't push this because of the accelerated session. We have some things that, there are always some challenges that come out. There's going to be a bill in the legislative session to allow what they call pilots, payment in lieu of taxes. That lets the local government make a decision. Local governments get to decide where the money goes if they want to enter into a pilot. And because all we heard from a lot of people is let the locals decide. I mean, you have a group out there that's fighting that's trying to stop industrial development. Early on, they said the locals ought to make that decision. The state shouldn't make it. Well, in a pilot, locals make the decision. Now that same group's saying, no, the locals can't make that decision.
Right. They're opposed to that.
They're opposed to that, too.
It's interesting. Let me shift. We'll be watching for that closely because I know it's something. We've got about a minute and a half left, so I want to hit this. Most people don't recognize how critically important infrastructure development and maintenance is to this industry. If you look at places like Dow Plaquemine and a lot of other areas, one of the reasons I think we lost the big Exxon project was because of the poor infrastructure in the area. Give us 30 seconds on industry's perspective on infrastructure development and maintenance.
When you talk about infrastructure development and maintenance, you have to look at it from a different perspective. There are ways to move our goods and products around, pipeline, barge, rail. The issue becomes, how do you move your human capital? How do you move your employees around and the quality of life for them? Right. Now you got to go recruit them. So the focus for us on infrastructure is because of our employees. We have to recruit good people from all around the country, and the gridlock.
And they don't want to sit in traffic, and we'll lose them. We got 15 seconds. Your message to the general public on behalf of the chemical industry in Louisiana.
I think you take a look at your local chemical industry. We're more than just steam and hissing pipes. We do things that make life better for you.
That's exactly right. And including the jobs and the taxes and all the other benefits.
Above the jobs, taxes, and everything else, it's what we do to make your life better.
Greg Bowser, my friend, always a pleasure to have you on the show. But we'll have you back sometime soon as we watch this regular session play out, and we'll pay attention to it from the chemical industry's perspective. That's a wrap, guys. Thanks for joining us. Join us again next week at this very same time for another edition of the Louisiana Business and Industry Show.